and it just never seemed to work. So every relationship that did not work seemed to reinforce some things that my particular abuser would say. One thing that she would say would be, "You're lucky you have me because no one else would want you." So it seemed like so it just seemed like everyone that didn't seem to work out just reinforced what she was saying. What happened was, in my case, there was a couple of relationships that didn't work in a row, and I woke up and said, something is not right. And I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was really interesting because I was having a conversation with a female friend of mine. We were coming back from an audition, and we were chatting about the topic, and she said, well, maybe the problem isn't the other girls, maybe the problem is with you. And I said, okay, well, what does that mean? So in my church, they were offering counseling. They had a licensed psychologist that was there, and she offered counseling. And I went in and chatted with her about it. And she kind of explained to me where and she actually took it back to my mother, who was a very needy individual, and there's actually a very early on in my childhood a circumstance that happened that made me feel like I needed to be her protector. I needed to be her guardian. She still is, my mother, and I love her very much, but there's some history there. But what I did unknowingly was take that as that incident that happened at an early age as a child, where I needed to be her protector and her guardian, and try to help her and fix her problems. And I took that to other relationships, where I always seemed to be going to the girls that were having the problems, having the issues, and I'd be like, well, I'll take care of you, I'll fix this, those sorts of things. So, and then when it didn't work, I'd just get all frustrated, and it just reinforced other things. So it actually took me going and seeking some counseling to find out what the root of the problem was, that, now I can look at some warning signs that come along and go, okay, I've seen this before, I've experienced this before, I just need to walk a little bit carefully here and make sure I just don't dive in.
Right.
So it was sort of a combination of little things that happened, but two big things that happened back to back just really smacked me in the head and woke me up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know when my mom and dad finally got the divorce and I was 16, I started dating a guy a couple years after that abused me for 2.5 years out of the 3 years I was with him. Mm-hmm. And I kept, going back to him over and over and over, but it's a common thing. Yeah, I didn't even think about it being the same as what my mother just got out of and I wanted her out of. And then one day, I don't know what happened. Maybe a light went on in my head. Maybe God spoke to me. I don't know. But I just said, enough. That's it. I'm done. I can't take anymore. And I left him for good. And then eventually I went to counseling and found out that through counseling, he said I was trying to fix my father by going with another guy that was like him and trying to fix him, like I would forgive him and think, okay, we can work on this, we can work it out. But that's something that's not going to happen because the other person has to want to do it as well.
That's correct, and that's an important thing. It's one of those things that you can't be the hero. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved.
Right.
And you can get frustrated, you can, beg, plead, cry, and that's actually very common for abuse victims, that mentality that if they just stay a little bit longer, if they just do this, then, the abuser will, change, those sorts of things. So, yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
It is. Well, and I'm thankful I only went through one bad relationship and got counseling, and I never, ever put up with that again by anybody. If I even thought there was an inkling of some kind of abuse, whether it be verbal or physical, that person was gone in a second. So
that's correct.
You know. But speaking of all of this, I would imagine that's what inspired you to write Glass Walls.
It is. Prior to the counseling, the second relationship that ended, in hindsight, looking back over the number of years, I saw the warning signs, but at the time it was very unexpected, very sudden. I actually sat down, after I picked up my belongings from her house, sat down and wrote this screenplay and just got it out just to get the emotions out of my head. Mm-hmm. It sat in a drawer for about 5 years before I picked it back up and looked at it. And when I read some of the dialogue in this screenplay, I said, where in the world did this come from? Because I don't remember writing this. And it's as if, the clouds parted and somebody guided my hands, because it actually took a sledgehammer to the walls that I had put up.
Right.
And made me see myself a little bit clearer. And that helped to prompt me to go, okay, well, maybe I need to go see this counselor. Maybe I needed to do this. But even after that positive thing that happened from reading the screenplay, I still sat it in, tucked away in a drawer for a little bit, because I was afraid of the way that people would look at me as a man, having put up with this. I was afraid that they would think, wow, you stupid, idiot, you deserved it, you asked for it, whatever else,
Well, some dorks might, but,
exactly,
most would understand.
It's one of those things where it's the male ego going, I can't let anybody know, that kind of stuff. And then I actually shared it with my sister-in-law, who I adore, and I say she's one of the few people that I trust with a 2x4 enough to smack me in the head when I need it, because I love her to death. But she read it and just absolutely loved it, and I sent it to a writer friend in L.A., and she read it and said, well, I wonder if I have walls. That's why I'm not, having So it's one of those things where, people that suffer abuse or any other type of trauma will often put up our walls as a way of guarding ourselves.
Right.
So we make sure we don't get hurt again. We don't fall for that trick again. We don't do something. And then when you take those walls into the dating world, because Glass Walls is actually a romantic drama. It's actually a very charming, sweet, happy ending romantic drama. But the subject of the film is a male trying to overcome that pain and his walls that he's put up. We tried to take those walls into our dating relationships, and, heaven forbid we actually get to like somebody, but we're too afraid to let them see us, or our painful experiences or our past or anything along those lines, because we're afraid they'll judge us. So they only get to know the part of us that we actually get to let them see. So when it doesn't work out, it just reinforces our walls. The idea of the film is that this guy has to take his walls down and be vulnerable and find his true love, because that's what really we need to do, and it's scary as all get out, to be that vulnerable, especially to somebody that you're just starting a relationship with, but you really do need to be completely open with each other about your past experiences, because, it's one of those things. One of my Twitter friends mentioned that the thing that there's always something about us that we don't like, the most, and I say, but that one thing might be, the one thing that somebody else loves about us the most. So it's just one of those, being able to trust somebody enough to do that. So that's really what this screenplay and this film, Glass Walls, does, is my hopes anyway, inspires someone who has been dealing with those walls, struggling to find true love, to go, okay, let me take these walls down, look at myself in a whole new light, And it's done in a very charming and very sweet, entertaining way.
Well, I have to agree. I watched, of course, just the trailer of it and read what it was about, and it's inspirational, and it's definitely a movie I would like to see and I would love to see funded. But
Yep.
One question before we go to that is, why a film and not a book?
Very interesting. I've had a couple of people ask me that. I actually have a feature screenplay about human equality through the races and stuff like that, and somebody said, why don't you do a book on that as well? Because I grew up dyslexic, I actually graduated high school. Yeah, I actually graduated high school with an 8th grade reading level. Reading was always so hard for me to do. In fact, typing anything is so I have to go back and proofread it a number of times because I type words backwards all the time.
Uh-huh.
So it's easier for me, and I remember even one of the things that I found benefited me in acting versus any type of reading novels or anything like that. My retention is much better because I also have ADHD.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so sitting down, and actually writing chapter after chapter, or even reading chapter, my retention would be completely gone. I would actually start to repeat myself over and over again. Whereas writing a screenplay or studying my lines on a screenplay and memorizing those screenplays, because they're in short little segments, it's so much easier for me to do. And that really is the main reason why I do the screenplay versus an actual book.
Well, that makes sense.
All righty. Yeah, that does make sense. You could always have a ghostwriter, too, just to take it from the screenplay and put it into book form.
I could. And that's always an option. I think film, and I'm not discounting novel writers by any means. I have a high respect for anybody that can take something from their mind. I remember being in high school and trying to go to a remedial reading class, and the school officials say, we don't understand how you can have a reading problem when you write so well. And I told him, I said, it's easy, because when I read, it has to go in and process, and I said, when I write, it just kind of comes out, and I write. I said, it's two entirely different things, but they didn't get it. So, yeah.
Sabina?
Yeah.
Sabina.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
Oh,
my phone died on me.
I was like, what happened?
I don't know if it was my phone. I don't know what happened. Okay, where was I?
I put her to sleep. That's exactly what happened.
I'm sorry. It just, all of a sudden I heard a beep, beep, beep. I'm like, what happened? Okay. Modern technology at its finest.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I was saying that this definitely looks very interesting, and so I tweeted out, and I'm going to start tweeting it out every day. I know you've only got 18 days left.
18 days to raise the funds, and that's correct. It's one of those things, and a lot of it's really probably one of the most frustrating things for a film producer to look at on crowdfunding, because I know some things on crowdfunding do very, very well. Some films seem to struggle just a little bit. So one of the things that I've done on this crowdfunding site is I did put it as an all or nothing campaign, which means that if we do not reach our goal, we don't receive a single penny. Everybody that does contribute gets a full refund back through the site. Mm-hmm. That puts a lot of pressure on me as the producer to get the word out and market it, et cetera, et cetera. And I appreciate everybody that has retweeted and supported. But what it also does, what I've done on there is 10% of the funds that we receive with full funding or over go to two organizations that support victims of abuse. One supports victims of child abuse, and the other supports victims of domestic violence. And it's just my way of giving back to those people that have experienced similar things to myself, but also where the film is targeting to people to make some sort of awareness to this issue.